validation doesn't mean that you're agreeing. And that's a big mistake that we make. Sometimes we don't want to validate our children's emotion or even our partner's emotion because we fear that we are agreeing with them, and we're losing power. No, you're not losing power. You're gaining power in every single relationship where you validate. Because that creates connection between two human beings.
Yes. So we're going to talk about how limits can help us also avoid constant chaos and tantrums, because there are things you guys can do to kind of limit the amount of confusion there is around technology in your house, or the more consistent we can become on setting limits, the easier it's going to be for your child to adapt to this kind of structure in your home, right? So the first thing is you want to be very clear, even as young as, we have 2-year-olds in here. This is totally okay, where you have a clear boundary around when can you use technology, when can you absolutely not use technology. And I think that the absolutely not that Mariam likes to call red zones are probably more important than when can you, because the day feels a little blurry for a child that young. But the absolutely not would be something like at night, at bedtime, no screens in the room, no screens at all, right? You can't take your iPad, you can't sleep next to your iPad, or you might decide family meals are really important for us, and there's not going to be this. I know that this has become a thing where because people are so desperate to get their kids to eat, they need to eat in front of a screen. And what the child starts to learn is that, one, they're incapable of eating without a screen, which is absolutely not true, but this becomes totally habitual. And also, what else that child starts to learn as they get older and they start experimenting with power is now they realize they have a powerful tool, which is, if you don't turn on the screen, I'm not going to eat. And this is so common. You'll hear this from 3-year-olds, 2-year-olds. They'll be like, no iPad, no eating, right? So now they've got leverage on this. And this is where parents also need to think about, like, this goes way beyond the scope of this webinar, but thinking about how much we're so controlling over what they need to do in the moment that we're going to do anything in order for them to do it. Careful with setting these habits. They are not healthy. This is not the way to teach your child to follow certain structure throughout the day, okay? Talking about how much time they can use technology when they're using it. So instead of using time as like, you have 30 minutes to use it, a child from 0 to 6, it's very, 6 maybe, but as a smaller child, it's very abstract, the concept of time. This can also create room for arguments and disagreements, and no, that wasn't 5 minutes, and I want 3 more minutes, whatever it was. I always say make it kind of relatable to whatever the child's doing. So if the child's playing something on the iPad, you want to say, okay, as soon as this turn is over, or 2 more turns, and then our iPad gets closed, right? Or if they're watching a show, you let them know, when it gets to that song at the end, the Sophia song, then we know it's time to turn it off. And then I love, by the way, I didn't say this in the other slide, but once a child calms down, let's say they have a big feeling, eventually you're going to see that they're going to stop having such giant feelings all the time when it comes to these things, right? They're able to contain themselves more. But once they're kind of back to calm, this is where I love to throw in choices, right? So at this point, when we're over the frustration, she's kind of back to normal, and I'll let her know something like, okay, well, we still have to turn off the TV now. So do you want to turn it off with the special remote, or should mommy turn it off? That's a choice. You're still setting a limit, but I'm giving her a way of like regaining a little bit of power, right? Or do you want to press, like, we need to go, or we need to go to, dinner now, or we need to go to Shabbat. We need to press pause. Would you like to press pause on this part, or should we just turn off the screen? So you can get really creative about, or it's time to turn off your iPad. Do you want to leave it charging, or do you want to leave it on the counter? It's so minimal and it sounds so dumb, but I promise you this sort of helps the child feel like you're not just this all-bearing, controlling parent. Does that make sense?
I love it. I never have implemented that.
Oh, I do this all the time. So everything is a choice.
Like the thing is, I'm like in the military. When mom says there's no iPad, no more. They go like, like I train them for that one. But I love your.
Yeah, I always will implement a choice, and you can actually use choices can be the language you use for consequences, actually too, right? So I'll say to her like, okay, So I know the next one that we talk about is, hold on a second, I need to go here. So the next one we talk about is like if screen time is not working in your family for some reason, it's interfering or causing problems. So a real life example I have is, so because of quarantine, and quarantine, I don't have to explain it. She would wake up in her days now and want to watch TV in the morning before her Zoom class, because now school starts at 10:30 instead of 7:45, right? So I didn't have a problem with that until we actually have to get a little bit of work done before her class to prepare for her class. It was interfering. She couldn't switch from waking up and watching TV to that. So this is how I start phrasing it to her. I let her know in a very conversation way. I let her know, hey, Liv, it looks like we have a problem. Why? Because this all needs to get done before we start your class, right? But I notice it's been really hard for you to go from watching TV in the morning to sitting in the table and doing this. I know that's hard. So we're going to have to figure it out. So do you think that we should watch TV later in the day? And this is where I'll also give her like another choice. Or do you think that, if I give you an extra warning, you're going to be able to come here faster? And we try it out. So then I'll try it out with her the next day. And if it doesn't work, then I'll say to her, okay, it looks like that didn't work. We're going to have to use the other way. We're going to have to move TV time. And I give plenty, it's a collaborative process. This is what's really important.
But I think it's something that it's also important, which is red flags are different for every child. And you might have the same rules for two childs, and for one child, the technology thing doesn't work, and for another one, it doesn't. Some kids, they can watch more technology and there's not going to be negative consequences to them. For others, their mood will change more, will be more irritable. So you don't look for numbers. Right. Don't look for, see your child's behavior, and we all understand. And once you see it, then you can change it. Okay?
Yeah, this is totally, because the question that I'm sure you get asked, and the question I've seen in here at least a few times has been, but how much time can my child watch? And so what we want, our message, I think part of our take-home message is that you have to understand that balance looks like more than just a time, right? It looks like a lot of things. It looks like being attuned to your child's capacity with certain things. It also looks more than that. It looks like your child actually getting all of the really good learning that happens through every other form of development, right? So the face-to-face and good quality sleep and their exercise and their passion activities, and all of this is happening. This is the meal that we're talking about. And the media, unless it's incorporated, because sometimes it can be incorporated into your creativity, into the movement, like I said, the yoga, but really they need to get all of their kind of good development meal, that's the nutrition, and the balance is more like, okay, leisure time, because I know that they're developing in every other way, okay, right? So these are still red flags though. So like, for example, I know Mariam and I had a conversation about the motivation, because I know for older kids, this can be a big motivator, because kids get super into like gaming and all these kinds of things, right? But when they're young, this screen should not be the only thing that is used to motivate them. Like, I don't want this to be the sole incentive or consequence that you give your child. This isn't where the good learning, this isn't where skills happen, right? Skill building and learning about, like, we're not going to get into that today, but you want it to actually be related to whatever's going on. It shouldn't just be by default, okay, you're losing your iPad tonight because of this. No, you want to teach them, like, if you're trying to teach them what respect looks like, you need to teach them what respect looks like in that moment.
Yeah, but that's where I think technology should be more like a privilege. Not really you see what I'm saying? It's different. This is a privilege that you get. This is not something that, and I decide when or where, it's beyond our responsibility. It's beyond that you deserve it. No. It's a privilege. It's something that we don't need, and we're lucky that we have it in our lives.